We're about to start this session, and we're going to start with a couple of videos first that give context to this session. So we're about to cue those up, and then we'll be started.
मैं अपनी जाति की पहली लड़की थी जो स्कूल गई। मैं अपने गांव की पहली लड़की थी जो कॉलेज गई और अपना खुद का बिजनेस है। क्या सभी लड़कियों को एक मौका पाने के लिए इतनी मुश्किलों का सामना करना पड़ता है? उम्मीद है नहीं। जब मैं छोटी थी तो मेरे मम्मी पापा मुझे स्कूल नहीं भेजते थे। यह सब मुझे मंजूर न था। मैं पढ़ना चाहती थी। उसके बाद मेरे मम्मी पापा ने मुझे स्कूल छोड़ने और मुझ पे शादी करने का दबाव डालना चाहा। मुझे अपनी जिंदगी से और चाहिए था। मैं कॉलेज में पढ़ना चाहती थी। मैंने अपने मम्मी पापा को मनाने के लिए भूख हड़ताल की। कॉलेज फी भरने के लिए मैं मधुमक्खी पालिका बनी। इसके लिए मैंने प्रशिक्षण ली। वहाँ मुझे थोड़ा डर भी लगा क्योंकि वहाँ मुझसे दोगुनी उम्र के पुरुष थे और अपना खुद का बिजनेस है। मैंने अपने परिवार का घर सही तरीके से बनाया और उनकी दवाइयों का खर्च उठाती हूँ। मुझे देखकर आज हमारे गांव की सारी लड़कियां स्कूल जाती हैं। मेरी कहानी आपके लिए क्या मायने रखती है? मैं अकेली लड़की हूँ जिसे अपनी बात कहने का मौका मिला है, परंतु 60 करोड़ ऐसी लड़कियां हैं जिन्हें यह मौका शायद ना मिले। आप दुनिया चलाते हैं। अभी जो आप कर रहे हैं वो काफी नहीं है। लड़कियों को एक मौका देने के लिए जो कुछ भी करे, मैं चाहती हूँ वो आप करें। मेरा नाम अनीता है। मैं एक लड़की हूँ। अब मैं आप लोगों से सुनने का इंतजार करूंगी।
Good morning. My name is Helene, Gayle, and I'm president and CEO of CARE, which is an international humanitarian and development organization focused on working with poor countries around the world to give them the capacity to bring about long-lasting change for themselves and their communities and help in the fight to eliminate extreme poverty. We as an organization have put as a central focus women and girls in all of our work, because women and girls are disproportionately impacted by poverty, but we also know that women and girls hold the real opportunity of making changes not only for themselves, but for their families, their communities, their nations, and ultimately, I think it's what's going to change our world. But even an organization like CARE that's put a focus on women and girls, the focus on girls specifically can sometimes get lost. And I think this is what this panel is about, is to really talk about the unique needs, the challenges, and the opportunities, which I think this film showed so well, that there is in investing in girls. And so that's what our focus is going to be about. And we want to really be able to address some of the challenges that were thrown out, including Anita's question to us at the end of the film about what we can do. And so I expect that this is going to be an incredibly lively discussion with a great panel here to talk about some of these key issues. Before I start, I just want to acknowledge a few organizations that have really worked tirelessly to make sure that this panel happened. And this is actually a panel that's been 4 years in the making, because many people didn't understand why at an economic forum should we be talking about girls. Well, I hope that that will be clear to everybody by the end of this panel, if it's not already. But I particularly wanted to acknowledge the UN Foundation, particularly the work of Kathy Kelvin, the Nike Foundation, Maria Idle and her team, and all the work that they've done, along with the Novo Foundation, Jennifer and Peter Buffett. There are many who have helped to make this panel happen, but those three have played a particularly important role. Let me just say a word about the format before I introduce our panelists. We're going to start with a moderated discussion. I'll be the moderator, with Q's and A's to the different panelists who present a variety of different experiences. And then we'll take about 20 minutes of questions from the audience. And then we want to return to the panelists to give some closing comments. So we have a distinguished panel here that I will introduce, and I'm not going to make long introductions. And first of all, to my right and your left is Ann Veneman, who's the Executive Director of the United Nations Children Fund, or as most people know, UNICEF. Immediately following is Professor Muhammad Yunus, who is the Managing Director of Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, but many people also know him as the Nobel Prize winner for his work in microfinance. To my immediate right, Melinda French Gates, who is the co-chair of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. To my left, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, who is the Managing Director of the World Bank. And the Honorable Marie Pangestu, Minister of Trade for Indonesia. And last but not least, Mr. Mark Parker, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Nike Incorporated. So thank you all for being here and being willing to share your expertise. Let me just start with Yunus. You know, most people associate your name with empowering women economically and the whole microfinance revolution, if you will. Tell us why you're here today on a panel that focuses on girls. Why is focusing on women not enough? And why did you also extend that focus to a focus on girls explicitly?
Well, let me try. What we do in our work, not only we started focusing on the women. First, we wanted to be even with men and women. Then we saw it makes so much more sense to focus on women, because the impact in the family is so much more. Seeing a whole list of them, not just one or two. So we shifted the focus on women. As we went to women, immediately we got involved with children. And children means both boys and girls. First, we tried to bring them to dare to go to school, because there's no family tradition of going to school. So we started using our own spot, what we say weekly meeting center. Since it's done only once a week, the rest of the week is empty space. We said, why don't we send all our children here? And asked one of the village girls who knew how to read and write to teach these girls read and write so that they don't feel nervous when they go to school. So that was the beginning of encouraging sending children to school. And it became such a big movement with us. We finally achieved 100% children going to school, the formal schools where they get education. And some of the kids were doing wonderful in the schools, performing at the top of the class. So we started giving scholarships to kind of recognize them, the thrill of them. Then in our scholarship policy, we made it a rule that 50% of the scholarship will be reserved for girls, so that they don't feel that, oh, we are not as good as the boys, that they are the one who are doing that. So this is 50% is for you. And the remaining 50% is open for both boys and girls. As a result, always in our history, 65 to 70% of the scholarships went to girls because they got the 50% reserved and additional they got from the open scholarship. We give out almost 50,000 scholarships every year. So that's a tremendous amount of encouragement because we have a celebration, not only just give it. In the village, we have a celebration to announce who is gotten the scholarship this year. So whole village will get together and the family who never been to school feel thrilled that they're going to school. Then we encourage them as they go on to get into higher education. And we give total student loan for them. Tuition, fees, and also maintenance, everything, books. So today there are more than 34,000 students in education loans. And of that, we still have not reached 50% girls because everybody is entitled. Many of the girls are married off, or families don't want them to go to colleges and so on. So still we have about 40% of the students going to the higher education, and we encourage the girls to go into higher education. What we have done, we also, along with Grameen Bank, we have something called Grameen Shakti, which is solar energy organization. We promote solar energy in the villages, and we sell as a business solar energy. We have more than 200,000 solar home system already done, and we want to reach 1 million solar home system in the next 3 years. And this is village-based, and we recruit the young girls from the villages who are high school dropouts, who are just either going to school or dropouts in school, exclusively girls, to train them to make the accessories which is needed for the solar home system. You have the panel, you have the battery. In between, you have lots of electronic parts. In the beginning, we used to import them. Then we thought maybe these are simple things, we can produce it. So we tried to do it in Dhaka. Then we see that it's very easy. So we do it in every village, and we bring the girls to do that and use them, the girls, to maintain this solar system. Which maintenance becomes a big problem. We train them, and we call these girls who work as a piece base. As many pieces you make, as much money you make. And we call them Grameen engineers. And such a respectability. People say these are Grameen engineers. They have their badge. They are the Grameen engineers. They fix your solar system. They know the parts because they build these parts. So this is another whole thousands of girls now working in that spirit that maintain that. And then we went to healthcare. So we used the girls to become the first front line of the healthcare. We have the Grameen clinics, and they became the paramedics. They became the village health assistants. Now we are in the process of upgrading these health clinics into what we call health management centers. So that it's not when you're sick you come. You come when even you're healthy, because you want to make sure you don't get into sickness. So this is one of the jobs, and this is what we create the young girls who will be trained as nurses. We'll have a nursing training college, and nurses who will be trained for these purposes. They will be running these health centers, management centers, and then we'll do the early detection and early treatment, and let these girls go house by house as independent health providers with equipments, equipments which can be connected with the information technology. So they will take the ultrasound to the pregnant mothers and take the digital images and send them to the city, and then the doctor will analyze it and tell her what to do with the mobile phone, and she will go and talk and connect the doctor with the pregnant mother, and they will talk, and so that all this can be done. The idea is here that we focus on in our healthcare, we focus on the mother, we focus on the child, and we focus on the adolescent girls, because these are the three elements which really make up the worst part of delivery of health service. So what we are doing, we'll be using them to deliver the service rather than leave it to some city doctor to do the delivery of it. They become the forefront and the fundamental piece in the health delivery system. Mm-hmm. So this is what we are working on right now.
Yeah. That's great, and I think you raise a lot of incredible points. One is really this focus on how important adolescence is in so many of the cultures that we think about around the world, and how we haven't really given girls an opportunity for a transition from girlhood into adolescence, and I think your programs talk about that, and also how they help to empower and change the girl and her self-image, but also start making social change in the community. So it's great, and we may get back to some of those issues as well. Melinda, you just got back from Africa, getting a chance to visit projects that have a focus on girls. Tell us a little bit about that. What did you see? What were some of the obstacles, challenges, but what were some of the things that you think are going to come out of that will make a difference?
So right before the World Economic Forum, I came from Tanzania and Ethiopia on purpose to see a lot of the field work that's going on by many of the NGOs in the room here today and some of the work of our own foundation. And I think the thing that I was most impressed about was the healthcare system and how those are being built out in both Tanzania and Ethiopia. And let me explain why that's so important for this category of girls. When you have a very rural population like they do in Tanzania and Ethiopia, those young women, when they go to have a baby, they're never going to make it to the district hospital. They don't have the money to get there. They don't have the transportation to get there. A lot of times they're stigmatized when they do get there. So you have to build out your health system. So you not only have the district hospital, but the rural hospitals, a health center, and then at the very end, a health post with an extension worker who can talk to girls about what they need in terms of their antenatal visits and in terms of what they're going to need during birth. And so in Ethiopia, it was just so great to see it being built out because they have now 30,000 young women who are going out and living in these rural villages and talking to women about the services they need and providing the services that they need. And as well, they've got 3,000 of these health centers where women can come in to do births if they choose. Now, the women still aren't choosing to come in yet. I think they will over time as they learn more about it, but they're certainly getting the messages out. So why is this important? A young girl, if she has a baby before the age 20, she's 5 times more likely to die than she is if in her 20s. So we need to start talking with girls at a very young age, not age 15. You need to talk to them at age 10 and age 12 about family planning. Because if a young girl has a baby in her teens, which many do in some of these countries in Africa, she's much more likely to die of hemorrhaging because of an iron deficiency. If she's not at her full height yet, which of course you're not at that age, you're going to have a more likely chance of an obstructed labor. If you're malnourished, which a lot of these girls are, you're much more likely to have an underweight birth baby, which leads to all kinds of cognitive development issues for the child, and also low birth weight leads to all kinds of issues for health for the child later. So the thing that was so encouraging to me was to actually talk to the women who are starting to be visited by these health extension workers and to ask them about family planning and what they knew. And it was so great to hear the women talk about that their mothers, the previous generation, had no access, didn't know about family planning, and that these young women, most of who were in their 20s and some in their early 30s, they knew about family planning and they learned about it between roughly the age 15 and 18, it sounded like. And I said, well, what do you hope for your daughters? And they said they absolutely need to learn younger. Our society is changing, and they have to have these messages earlier. And if we get those messages, we're very hopeful that our girls will learn about what it takes to protect themselves and how to plan the births of their children. And I found that very, very hopeful to see that much progress being made and to think about the next generation of girls to come.
Just a follow-on question. Your foundation obviously has made a real commitment to global health, but you're also working in the global development arena. Say a little bit about how you think girls fit into that portfolio as well, and how have you started to incorporate that notion in some of the global development work?
Well, in global development, we work in a number of areas. Let me just talk about one, which is agriculture. One of the things when you look at agriculture and who's actually working on the farms, it's the women. And so again, when I go out to meet with these women, they're often late coming to a village. If you're gathering them under a tree in the village, they're often late. And so when I was in Tanzania, it actually had rained that morning. And so the women started dribbling in, and when you ask them, they say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm late, I worked on my farm. They were so excited that it had rained that morning, of course. Then when you talk to them about what they need extension, they need agricultural extension services so they can get the best seeds. So they're not growing the crops that aren't the ones that fit into the economy where they can actually make money. So they need seeds so that they can increase their income. But if you give the women the tools on the farm and they increase their family income, women are 90% more likely to take their family income and plow it back into their family. Whereas if you increase a man's income, he's only about 30 to 40% likely to put that income back in his family. And universally, when I go out and talk to people in villages, whether it's India or it's in Bangladesh, it's in various places in Africa, when you ask both the women and the men, what they hope for their children, I get the universal answer of education. And so when I think about girls, I think about how do we invest, taking the generation today that is the incoming generation, and make sure they invest so that they have the money to send their girls and their boys to school.
Let me turn to Mark for a minute. Your foundation has obviously played a key role in this and has made girls its highest priority. But you're a businessman. Why did you think, from a business case, that it made sense to put that kind of priority on investing in girls?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to take 1 second to also thank the World Economic Forum for putting this important issue on the main agenda at this meeting. And yes, this is a very direct connection to shaping the post-crisis world in many ways, but which I'm sure we'll talk about. The decision for Nike to focus on girls became quite easy when we started to dig in deeply and look at where there was opportunity in a very focused way to make a big difference. I mean, we have limited resources, unlimited opportunities, so we're obviously motivated to go in deeply on something that can make a big difference. And as we really looked at this with the insights of some great partners like United Nations Foundation and others, we found that the most neglected, at-risk, and unsupported part of the world's population also happened to be the part of the world's population that could make the biggest impact if supported with real economic opportunities. So for us, that was a really practical motivation to get in and use what competencies we have, what investments we can make and get others to make with us, and the passion, I think, that we have as a part of our culture to really focus on this important issue. And also the obvious notion for those that have been studying this, that this is a very important issue in terms of stemming the tide of intergenerational poverty. This is one of the most impactful things you can do. That's the practical side. On the emotional side, I think for us, we're in the business really of human potential, arguably. And I think ultimately all of us are, everybody in this room and beyond is really, that's one of our main should be one of our main goals, I think, is human potential, our own and those who we work and live with. So this was an opportunity to take one of the most important agents of change to give them opportunity to realize their potential. We don't create that potential. We see it, we value it, we try to enable it. And by providing those opportunities, real economic-based opportunities for girls, the impact potential they have on their family, their village, their community, and ultimately the country is transformative. This has the ability to affect social stability, stimulate economic development, and really be one of the most important and powerful things that we can be doing. And it's surprised us, quite frankly, that it wasn't getting as much support as we thought it was. So it became quite easy for us to jump in and be a part of this.
Your comments make me think of one additional question. When I talk about this issue, I'm asked all the time, so are you forgetting about boys? Are you leaving boys out of the equation? So what about boys? And I imagine as a man, you must get asked that a lot. Why are you just talking about girls?
Well, personally, I have I think, I see the need for girls who are very much neglected, again, not just in the developing parts of the world, but all around the world. And I see that. I mean, I'm a father. I have 2 daughters, and I can see that at that basic level. But when you really get into look at the developing parts of the world, that becomes magnified and incredibly obvious. But the reality is that investing in girls actually helps everybody. It helps boys. It helps their families. It helps those that aren't even here, the next generation. So, this isn't necessarily a question of adding more funds. It's a question of directing some of the funds that are already out there to a place that can give us higher return and make a higher impact.
Great, thanks. And let me follow up with Ngozi on that. Former finance minister, now working at the World Bank, somebody who's focused on economics. You have launched an initiative focused on adolescent girls at the World Bank. Tell us a little bit about that and how you see that being so pivotal, not only to that particular initiative, but for all the things that you're trying to accomplish across the World Bank.
Well, thank you. Helen, for that question. Let me say that at the World Bank, and not just the World Bank, but also the International Center for Research on Women and other organizations, there have been more than 2 decades of work now that shows that investing in women, let me start with women, we now say investing in women is smart economics. It's not just about equity, but about the fact that it contributes positively to GDP growth.
We have the president of ICRW in the audience, Geeta Rao Gupta, who's done some of the real pioneering work.
Yes, she's pioneered for years. Yeah. But the thing is, if you think about it, if investing in women is smart economics, and investing in girls, catching them upstream, as Melinda was saying, is even smarter economics. Because, you know, we believe that investing in girls is at the center of development. If you think about it, if you invest in girls, if you educate girls, if you get girls into jobs, you solve so many problems. The population problem, family welfare problem, climate change, if you think about it and think that population is at the heart of it, poverty. If you look at the Millennium Development Goals one by one, you will see that if you can get to girls, all these problems we are struggling with will have a tremendous impact. So that's why at the World Bank we're interested in that. But in addition, let me also mention that we think it's important because girls, we've not somehow targeted them well. You started off the session by saying that girls tend to be subsumed in women, and we tend to forget some of their particular needs. And it's a tremendous population. 1.5 billion people in the world today are between the ages of 15 and 24. 750 million are girls, almost the whole population of sub-Saharan Africa. If you can catch them, it's a tremendous opportunity. But there are also challenges in the targeting. We're talking about educating girls. 70% of the 130 million people out of school, children out of school today, are girls. Just think about that. So if we can educate these girls, it makes a huge difference. If a girl finishes secondary school, it adds 30% more to her income. And you've seen from the video, what was the girl in the video investing in? Paying medical bills for the family. She upgraded her family's home. So as Mark had mentioned, it is critically important to family welfare, to the country's welfare, and to global welfare that we place girls at the center of education. And we think, lastly, about this initiative. We've targeted fragile and post-conflict states because we've remarked that or noticed that girls in those countries are particularly at risk. And so this initiative, which I would like to thank the Nike Foundation, Mark and Maria Eitel, who is in the audience, who worked so hard, other partners, the governments of Norway, Denmark, Sweden, even the City of Milan Foundation, the Sherry Blair Foundation, she's in the audience. We've started a public-private partnership to support girls, to identify girls, whether in rural areas, like in places like Southern Sudan, to see how we can train them, put microcredit in their hands, give them life and work skills so that they can improve their communities and themselves. In Liberia, which is where we have our first pilot, we have a program where we are, in fact, working with an organization that not only helps us to identify and train girls and helps the Liberian government. President Johnson Sirleaf had made this a particular focus. But they also have an incentive to place the girls and will make sure that those trained get into work. And so that's something different that we're doing. And Bob Zellick of the World Bank is absolutely committed to this initiative. We've raised $20 million already from all these partners. And I want to encourage all those businesses in the audience and governments to please join us in this tremendous initiative. You can really make an impact.
That's great, because I was going to ask you, were you swimming upstream on this by yourself, or did you have that kind of support? So it sounds like you really have the kind of support you need within the bank at the highest level to make this happen. And it is a partnership, and I think that's the other part about it that's unique, and there is a lot of opportunities for others to join in on that. Anne, let me turn to you for a moment. where you sit, UNICEF, people tend to think about UNICEF as children. You obviously have a focus that's broader than, kind of the 0 to 5, which is where people tend to think about UNICEF's work. And you really put a real focus on adolescence. And you personally, I think, have talked about the importance of that. Say a little bit about how that's changed the work at UNICEF and how that particular focus on adolescence is making a difference. But also, how are you able to make sure that you keep a focus on adolescent girls? Because we often, in this broad category of youth, miss what the needs are specifically for girls in that.
Well, thank you very much. And I think what we have tried to do is look at children as the definition under the rights of the child, which is those people under the age of 18. And so this encompasses quite a broad range. Children under 5 are important because when we look at the Millennium Development Goals, we're looking at things like under 5 mortality. We're looking at under 5 underweight for the nutrition aspects. But if you really want to have an impact, you have to look at the interrelatedness of all of the issues. And you have to look at particularly adolescent girls, although adolescents generally, as part of how we achieve where we need to go. So we work primarily in the areas of health, education, protection. The health issues, I think, have been extremely well articulated by Melinda. If you have adolescent girls having children under the age of 20, you have a 5 times a greater likelihood of maternal mortality. But it also impacts on child mortality because that woman or that girl, that adolescent girl who's having a child, her child, as we see child mortality come down, the proportion of child mortality that is related to infant mortality, less than a year of life, actually less than a month of life, or even 2 weeks or 2 days of life, that is related to the health of the mother, and that is going to be much higher when you have adolescent girls having children. So the health issues are important. The health issues are related to water and sanitation. Water and sanitation are extremely important avenues. Hand washing. I met with Unilever here this week. They're a big partner of us on water and sanitation. They said to me, we have figured out that if we really want to make a long-term behavioral impact on hand washing with soap, it is through working with adolescent girls. They'll take it back to the families in which they live, and they'll take it forward in the families that they will eventually have. And so I think that shows sort of the economic marketing case for focusing on the impact that adolescent girls can have in the family. Also, education, as Ngozi says, is so critical, keeping the girl in school. But looking, what are the impediments that keep the girl out of school? It's oftentimes having to work in the family, fetch water, and not having separate bathrooms. UNICEF has worked very hard to get separate restroom facilities in schools. Also trying to encourage water points in communities can save a tremendous amount of time for what girls would have to be doing otherwise and keep them out of school. But I think one of the areas we haven't touched on yet is protection. I mean, girls are subject to sexual violence at very early ages in so many parts of the world with absolute impunity, and this has to stop. They are then the ones that are getting HIV/AIDS at higher rates than even males today. And part of this is due to the sexual violence of teenagers. So I think we have to look at some of these issues. Are the laws being enforced? Are they in place in the first place? How do we help to implement the laws that will protect young girls and women? How do we change the attitudes? And this gets to the question about men and boys. Not only do we have to protect girls and women, we have to change the attitude about men and boys and how they treat women and how women are actually subjected to so much violence, which spreads AIDS, which gets them pregnant early, which takes them out of school. It is this intergenerational cycle of poverty that it can be broken if we focus on the adolescent girl.
Thanks, and I'm glad you brought up the issue of sexual violence, which we know is a really key challenge. I mean, look at Nick Kristof from the New York Times, who's about to put out a book that focuses on a lot of those issues. So thanks for raising that. Now, finally, Mari, let me ask you a question, and then people who have questions get queued up. We'll take a few from the audience as time permits. You know, we saw the film on Anita, and we were talking last night, and you were telling me a little bit about your own story, and that in some ways you have some parallels. Tell us a little bit about what it was like for you, your childhood, and how that relates to some of these issues of overcoming obstacles and finding the motivation to break out of the pack.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to focus on the whole theme of how do we ensure girls have the chance and continue to have the chance. And just reflecting on my own experience and Indonesian experience, I grew up in a very traditional family. My mother was always telling me, don't be so smart. Even if you're smart, don't show that you're smart, or you'll never get married, you'll never get a boyfriend, and so on and so forth. That was how, my household was. And I wanted very badly to do well in school. I wanted to do better than the boys. I had a very competitive spirit, but my mother was always telling me the opposite. Fortunately, I didn't have to go on hunger strike like Anita. My mother also didn't want me to do a PhD. She said, for sure you'll never get married if you have a PhD in economics. So fortunately for me, I didn't have to go on hunger strike. I had a very, very insightful father who, from the age of 10, I remember it very clearly in my mind, he said to me, you have to do well in school because you have to be financially independent no matter what. Even if you get married, it doesn't mean that you're going to be financially secure. Your husband can die, you can get divorced. You must go do well in school to become financially independent. So the fights were always between my mom and my dad always supported me until I finished my PhD. And because I have the chance, I became the first woman to have a PhD in economics in Indonesia. And that's in 1986. You're talking not that long ago, 1986. And I also became the first woman of Chinese descent, which is a minority in Indonesia, in the cabinet of this present government. So I could do it because I had the chance. And if I sort of reflect, why did my father have this view? It's very unusual because my father was a very traditional man in many other ways. I think it was because he grew up poor. His mother was illiterate, but valued education. And he was told to run away at the age of 14 when his father wanted to take him out of school to contribute to the family income. His mother said, run away, go to Jakarta, survive. And he did. He went to school and worked at the same time. I think that's the reason. And then when empirically speaking, my story is not unusual. Girls underperforming academically in school. I think Muhammad Yunus' story earlier sort of reminded me of that. And empirically, that shows up in Indonesian numbers. But that's all gone. So you ask the question, why? How does the cultural and traditional values get changed? Part of it is role models. You know, the emergence of women who were given the chance and made it. And I think I would pick two important aspects of Indonesia that has made it change, so much so that empirically girls are outperforming men. They're the ones getting the scholarships. My ministry, other ministries, we hire on merit. More than 50% are women, etc., etc. I would pick maybe one, in the interest of time, one particular important fact of how role models emerge. I think it's democracy. We are a predominantly Muslim country, yet we could have a woman president, President Megawati, who was the previous president. One of the legislation she passed was 30% of parliamentary members must be women. We have direct elections now at all levels, including all the way down to the village. So you have governors who are women, village heads who are women, and I think your video clip showed how if it's a woman village head, she's going to pick getting clean water rather than maybe having a satellite dish so that you can have TV in your village. You know, I think it rings true. We have documented cases like that. So I think providing the chance for girls, it's partly culture and how the traditionals change. The final point I wanted to make is one as a policymaker. I've been in this, and I would like to thank the World Economic Forum for providing this panel. I've been talking about trade crisis, financial crisis, all these past few days, and yet here's a chance. We keep on talking about crisis is opportunity. Here's an opportunity in our managing the crisis, in the policies that we're undertaking for the crisis. Here's a chance to address the adolescent girl issue. So when incomes fall, when people lose their jobs, they don't have money, they will pull out the girl from the school. They will also have unemployment is greater in women than men. Empirically, in the Indonesian experience in the last few months, the number of job losses are greater in women than men. Yet when we are designing our stimulus programs, we have to think about this. So I'll just give you two examples. Myself and my colleague, the finance minister, who is also a woman, we are thinking through how we can do this. We have two programs where I think we have to think carefully about the adolescent girl and women issue. One is community empowerment programs. We have 3 billion rupiah, which is about $300 million per community, per village, per district. All the men are the ones, if all the men are making the decisions, they're going to make the wrong decisions in the sense that they're not going to be decisions that absorb the women who have lost their jobs. It's like building bridges, building roads, which are more men-oriented, things like that. Second, cash transfer program, free school scholarships, they have to be linked to making sure the girls stay in school. I think that's imperative. Given what I've just heard, then it's inspired me to go back and make sure that that we do that. I read about a program from Mexico, Oportunidades. They gave cash transfer to poor mothers, and they can only give the cash if the mother sends both boys and girls to school. So I think ideas like that, as we are designing the program for managing the crisis, is something, lessons to be learned. I think myself as a policymaker, I would welcome anybody who can give us ideas how, when we are designing the program in the crisis, because in the crisis, you are going to have a lot of girls losing the chance. And I think that's where we should focus on. Thank you.
Great, that's great. And I think it really shows, we've talked a lot about programs, but I think you really bring in the policy piece, and that along with programs, we also have to be thinking about the overarching framework and the policies that support the kind of programs that we're talking about. All right, let's get some audience participation. We'll turn it over. I'm just going to take some questions, because I'm not sure how many we're going to get to. Take about 6 or so questions and then get some answers. So, gentleman in the back.
Hi, I'm one of the young global leaders and happen to be supporting 2 anchors on the panel. I recently had a trip.
And mainly questions, as quickly as possible. Thanks.
Very quickly.
Not just to you, but everyone.
We're in a serendipitous time to have this panel here because we are in this global crisis. And what I saw in Cambodia and Laos with a lot of the weavers is that when before there was an economic stop, there was a trickle-down poverty. Because of the interconnected world, it's a flood. And in the last couple of weeks, the number of women who have gone into human trafficking is unbelievable. So when we're being stressed in foundations and in social ventures in this time of global crisis, how can we reaffirm our commitment to the girl effect and also the support of women's empowerment?
Thank you. Cherie Blair, let me call on you. You are doing a lot in this area, but if we have a mic.
Girls have loud voices. I just wanted to say quickly something about what happened at our meeting that we had at the World Bank. We must not think of this as something negative. The girls that we saw on the film, the girls that you've been talking about, they have an enormous amount to contribute, and they want to contribute. When you think about the struggle that every individual girl has to be able to stand up and actually contribute in her society, you're talking actually about the strongest people in the society, the people who are already used to dealing with a crisis, because their entire life has been about being undervalued and yet somehow managing to still get there and make a difference. So we should have confidence in these girls. It makes absolute sense to invest in these girls. They're not asking for our pity. They're just asking for us to enable them to do what they're already doing, but which they could do so much better with our help. The one thing I would also say is we need to collect statistics about girls. One of the things the policymakers could do is actually insist that we distinguish between boys and girls. And let's actually find out what's really happening, because one of the reasons we haven't been talking about this is because we haven't actually been documenting it.
Great, thank you, and thanks for all the work that you're doing. Tim.
Hi, Tim Hanstead from RDI in Seattle. We work on law reform, particularly around land property rights. So Anne had mentioned the need to reform laws and implement laws that don't protect women and girls. And so I just wanted to, the question for the panel is what is the role of law reform, given the discriminatory laws around criminal laws, you mentioned family laws, inheritance laws, land laws. What is the role of law reform and of implementing laws and of making girls and women aware of the rights that they do have in law and empowering them to assert them in order to get this potential of the girl effect?
Great, thanks. Over there.
Thank you. Yeah, Gary Cohen, BD. The impact of sexual violence, sexual exploitation, which was raised against adolescent girls and even pre-adolescent girls, in terms of the impact on disease spread, particularly HIV/AIDS, is greatly underestimated. How can we mobilize around this issue? 75% of HIV positive adolescents in high prevalence regions of the world are girls. They're not getting it from adolescent boys. They're primarily getting it from older men. How do we mobilize an effort against this? What's working, and how can we learn from what's working if there are already positive examples?
Great.
Given the strong evidence of high return, what are the forms of social resistance to these investments? And analogous to immigration, might it be that men are worried that they're going to lose social status, that it's a zero-sum game? Is there a fear from women that they will have an increased chance of not marrying or of being childless?
Great, and I think we'll stop with that because of time, and let me just get some responses to that round of questions, and if we have any more, maybe we'll start with this last question, and it's a little bit linked to the first one as well. You know, it seems so obvious. So what is the resistance? Why are there still impediments to really putting this kind of focus? Melinda.
I think less than resistance, I think it's that the issue wasn't brought to the forefront before. So when NGOs or foundations or civil society were developing their programs, they just weren't thinking that way. And so if you don't think about this particular issue, you don't build it into the program from the get-go. Whereas if you think about this particular age group and the impacts that we've all talked about in society, and you build it in from the very beginning. So if you're doing an agricultural program, you're saying right from the get-go, how do we reach the women? How do we reach the girls? How are they served today? How are they underserved? What is it that we need to do to change that whole system? Same thing for the rule of law, building in not only property rights, which is very, very important, but the education, the legal rights, making sure that, you know, children aren't going to fall into poverty, and then making sure that the countries, that we put pressure on the countries to enforce those laws. But I think part of it's just a mind shift so that we all are tracking it, because I can tell you right now, I don't know many NGOs, and we're also now moving in this direction as a foundation. We weren't tracking the statistics before on this particular segment. I could tell you in HIV, or I could tell you in one specific area, but I think just an awareness so that we're all going in the same direction is going to be a big help.
It'd be interesting, Yunus and Ngozi and Mari, all three of you coming from countries where there is a degree of social resistance. Say a little bit about why you think there is still resistance to this as an issue. Yeah. Ngozi.
Okay. Well, I think there are two things. Part of the resistance, both in our countries but everywhere really, is one should say that information is not out there. You know, and look at this forum. Mary just said it's wonderful to have this kind of a panel where you come to places where decisions are made, whether it's in country or outside, The information is not there. This is not talked about. It's taken, decades of research to squarely put it out there that, doing these investments makes sense, and that investing in girls or in women makes sense. So I think we need to do a lot more to get that information out there. The second factor is cultural, and we shouldn't shy away from it. Even sometimes when the information is out there, there are ingrained cultural beliefs that hold people back from making the right decision on girls. So the issue is, how do you break that? What sorts of programs can you put in place to give an incentive to get through this? And I think Marie made some very good remarks about programs that can actually reward parents. Maybe it's maybe disturbing to say this, but if you put incentives in the hands of the men and the women who are the parents, things often happen. And the kinds of social programs that she was talking about have been shown more and more to work.
Any additional comments on that?
Yeah, I think the cultural aspect is something we'll continue to face. And that can only be slowly, I think, change, even in a country like Indonesia, where empirically we have figures, comparing over the last 20 years how girls are no longer underperforming academically because they don't care to anymore. And I think the other thing that we need to do is in many societies, not just a society like Indonesia, a lot of girls, the way they're esteemed is whether you have that you are going to be happily married or not. I think somebody asked that question, that if you don't have a husband or a family, then you're a failure. That's the way the esteem of the girl is being measured. I think we have to break that down, whether it's role modeling, whether it's there are all kinds of ways. I think we have to be creative in thinking through that. And just by information, I am happily married with 2 children. And my mother did live to see that happen. So, and I get questions like that all the time from young women. Should I go and do more schooling? My boyfriend doesn't approve, this kind of thing. And my answer is just go for it. And
the rest will fall in place.
Yeah, you cannot predict how things will turn out. And if you do well, you can do so much. If you are, the other question that we always face is that, do women in policy making do better in having more affirmative policies for girls or for women? I think it's a question, but I would like to think that the answer is yes. And that's why getting more women in parliament, in decision-making power, or at least if they're not in decision-making power, in the process of making a decision, such as the community empowerment program that we are talking about, the women who are involved there have to be involved in the decision making. And I think the final one, the question on law reform and regulations, that is absolutely, absolutely important. I mean, we have been fighting quite a lot with archaic regulations, like in the past, a woman to get credit from the bank, she has to get a letter from her husband saying that she can, get credit. She's married and whatever. Even to get a passport, you have to have a letter of approval from your husband. Things like that. Those things have to go, and women have to know their property rights. We have so many very, very sad cases of women succeeding in small businesses, but everything is under their husband's name. And when they get divorced, they lose everything. We have so many cases like that. So telling women their rights, their legal rights, is also very, very important.
I'm going to come back to you in a minute, Mark, because I want you to talk a little bit about the question of statistics that Shireen mentioned, and you as a numbers-driven organization. But let me just ask Yunus to say a little, because in your comments earlier, a lot of the things that you talked about in your programs really were serving as a vehicle for tearing down some of the social resistance. So say a little bit more about how you've seen that actually happen and how social change is occurring as a result of that, and cultural change.
Well, we are all guided by our mindsets. So something for the first time happens, you resist. It's a very natural phenomenon, nothing to be afraid of it. When we started giving loans to women themselves resisted it. No, not me. Don't give it to me. I don't know what to do with money. So that's a very natural thing. We are not scared of that. We encourage our colleagues to go try to tear off the fear that surrounded her. And then the husband became the one opposition leader. That he would not let that happen because he thinks it's such an insult to him to give the loan to her, not to him. So that another battle we had to win. We had to go through a lot of preparation. Our theme was we shall not lose our money, at the same time we shall not lose our marriage. So this you have to keep both.
Right.
So this is
Right.
quite a job for them to do that kind of thing. And we had to go to very elaborate preparation for that, how to women to hold on to their money. Because the natural tendency is when a woman brings money home, husband takes it. Anything which enters my home is my money, my property. So that thing to overcome became very important. And we faced, first opposition we faced was of men in general, because we are lending money to women. That was absolutely no, that couldn't happen. Then it turned into religious opposition. Everybody, all the mullahs interpreted it, this is unacceptable in religion. You cannot lend money to women. And then we had to go on giving history after history from Islamic history that is perfectly all right for women to businesswomen. Even the Prophet married a businesswoman. So if you want to be a good Muslim, you must follow the Prophet. And say, if you're looking for a businesswoman, if you can't find it, come to us. We have lots of businesswomen here. So we had to kind of be bold. People say, and some people accused us, you are destroying our cultural fabric of the villages and so on. I said, look, cultures are made to be torn apart. That's what the cultures are for. Cultures is not a static thing. It grows with people. So you have to break things so that you create new culture, you merge yourself. So there's a political opposition. Extreme right thought we are something dangerous. Extreme left thought this is a capitalist expansion happening in our country. And coming to the expansion, getting in the grassroots capitalism, my God, stop him. Otherwise the capitalism will take over the whole country. It's a crazy kind of thing. So you have all kinds of opposition. We just quietly moved on. They said, if our only thing we always feel, if it works for people, nothing in the world can stop it.
Yeah.
And that's what really happened.
Yeah.
When you talk about legal reform, when we started giving housing loan, this is a daring thing, that you are giving housing loan to the poorest people who cannot give any collateral, nothing. We said, well, we'll try. No harm in trying. We started doing that. And we make it more complicated for us by saying that if you are taking a housing loan, you must bring the document that the land on which the house will be built is owned by you.
Yeah, yeah.
And women couldn't produce that because she's living with her husband. It's his husband's house. Title is with husband. We said, sorry, we cannot give it to you.
Yeah.
We knew what we wanted, but we played dumb. We said, sorry, the ruler's rule. We can't do that. So why don't you go and talk to your husband to change the ownership of the land in your name?
Yeah.
First, she was nervous. That should she even bring this up? She'll be beaten to death. Then they said, tell the banks told me. Or ask them to come to us. We'll explain. So we started explaining, look, it's good for you. You don't have a house. Look at the way you live. If you have a housing loan, you'll have a decent place and you can raise your children. You'll have nice sleep in your house. Finally, husband after husband started agreeing that. It's a very complicated process to change the ownership. And my friend from Indonesia understands our complicated laws, how you do that. He has to go through all these complicated procedures to hand over the ownership title to his wife. And everybody in the village here is stupid doing that. He has to resist that. He has gone through this whole process, and we give her a loan when she brings her title, and the house is built. You know, in Muslim society, particularly in Bangladesh, divorcing a wife is such a simple thing. Simply you say, I divorce you 3 times. It's done. You don't have to find anything else. And woman has to go back to her parents' house. She cannot stay here anymore because she is divorced. Usually she takes her children with her. Father doesn't want the children to stay there. So we do that. So what we have, all these 700,000 housing loans that we have given, divorce is a very rare phenomenon in that.
Yeah, well,
It's fascinating because I think you really make the point of how difficult it can be, but how it is possible if you realize that it is and stick with it. We're about to run out of time, so I want to just ask you to just address the issue of numbers and how you do that better, and then Anne, if you want to say a little bit to address the issue of sexual violence and how programs that you are working with, how you've seen that as something that is addressable.
Okay. Quickly, I actually think Sherry made a couple of great points, and the ignorance or the lack of real data here is one of the biggest obstacles, I think, in making progress in terms of, one, understanding the challenges, I think, that are out there and also the opportunities. So it's really important, I think, from an organizational level, a corporate level, and into the government sector to really establish some metrics against measuring what's going on here and how we can make progress and what programs are actually really making a difference. And that's one of the focuses of the several foundations, is to really develop that work. There's been some good work done over the last few years in starting to really get some critical mass around that. But that's absolutely essential and critical, and I'm really glad Sherry brought that up. The other point she made, which I really want to add quickly, is you can trust the girls. When you invest in them, they will take that investment and run with it. More so than any other investment I think you can make. You should have a great deal of trust that that investment is going to give you a very high return in many, many ways. And that's all she's asking for, is some support. Yeah. So,
thank you. Anne.
I think a couple of questions were raised, not only about the sexual violence and the transmission to HIV/AIDS, but also human trafficking. In many ways, they're connected, because so much of what happens to young women is related to sexual exploitation for commercial gain. So we have trafficking, we have sexual violence against women. Sometimes the women actually, or the young girls actually, agree to this for many reasons. They need cash. They need, clothes. They need a grade in school. The ways in which these societies often operate, whether it's a devaluing of the girl herself. I mean, I've met these victims of trafficking. I met a girl who was about 18 now, but when she was 12, she was trafficked from CEC, the former Soviet country, into Dubai. I mean, this is a common practice. And I think we have to address not only the trafficking issues, but the demand issues. We somehow have to be able to change attitudes in societies and the impunity with which these happen. UNICEF has a number of programs working with law enforcement to actually begin to train police officers, social workers, teachers, how to deal with victims of sexual violence, how to get law enforcement to begin to have the right kind of infrastructure in place to deal with this. There are many good examples of programs, but unfortunately, they're not yet widespread enough, and this is something that really needs further attention.
Great, thanks. And Ngozi had one last comment on this, and then I know I'm going to get the hook. So,
I just want to do something. So how many people who are in here now understand and believe in why we must invest in girls? Put up your hand. Okay, that's good enough for me. I just didn't want us to leave without.
Yeah, well, thank you. I was going to do something similar, but you did it so well. I think this has been an incredible panel. I think we could go on and on. The breadth of experience and the both a real clear articulation of the problem, but as well the solutions I think we've really discussed here today. And what we really wanted was what Ngozi just asked, is that everybody leaves here today believing that this is as vital, and particularly in this time of economic crisis, this is one of the best investments that we can make, and understanding how you can do that. So I hope all of you will go out from here with that understanding and thinking about how you can contribute to this girl effect in development and investing in girls and the potential for saving our humanity, as the film says. So thank you very much.